I think I've touched on the topic of Stoicism before, what it is, where it came from, and what it entails, really. Stoicism is a way of being unshakable, a way of being comfortable with whatever comes at you in life. Because whether you know it or not, you change every single day, every single hour, and every single minute. You change. Some changes happen drastically, all at once, but for the most part, it's little by little. And you grow. There are a few changes that, of course, set you back, but that's only if you let it. They say a mistake is not a mistake if you learn from it, then it becomes a lesson. And there's a lot of people out there that have written books, done TV shows that have in them a body of knowledge, essentially mistakes that these people have made, and they've corrected through hardship, suffering, pain, maybe some not, just some quick thinking. But let's take the ones that there was a mistake that was corrected by hardship, for instance, something that was really bad happened, and then they got over it, by doing this, and that. There are certain lessons that a human being learns the hard way, and the hard way only. For example, you could tell a kid not to stick his finger in the fucking light socket because it's 220 volts in Russia. And if he does, he's going to get zapped. Now, if you told me that as a kid, I would probably find that interesting. In fact, I would find it so interesting that I would probably want to see what this zapping thing is. And I would try. And try I did. Over and over again. My mother kept catching me inches away, centimeters away from the 220 volt outlet that would inevitably be my moment of change. I don't think she knows this. Maybe I've told her, maybe I don't, maybe she doesn't remember. But I didn't just touch the outlet. And it wasn't the outlet really that I touched. There was an iron plugged in to the outlet. And the iron had a frayed wire with an exposed one right next to it. So in the black cord that was the iron's cord, the wire was frayed and it was exposed. And I don't know what the fuck got into me. I don't know why to this day, but I decided to lick it. Now, I left Russia in 91. I was born in 84. So, what's that? 84, 5, 8, 60, 78, 9, 90, 91. I left Russia when I was 7. I remember leaving in February, came here in March, came here in February. March was my 7th birthday, I believe. And some of that time I spent in a hospital in Russia, but that was because of a blood disease I had that they were afraid that it was going to go down to my legs, spread. So they had to keep me in a part of the hospital for a long period of time. In hindsight, this is all kind of strange the way this happened, because I don't really remember much of it because I was so young. But I do remember enough that I know that it happened. Now, was that a legitimate disease? Was I really there because my legs hurt? No, I don't remember my legs hurting. In fact, I remember wanting to walk and them not letting me. I remember wanting to go out and do stuff, and they were like, no, you can't, because if you do it, it'll spread to your legs. And then my uncle, used to come and sneak me out, and we would walk together. We would play chess, we would play games. He was a little bit younger than my mother. My mother was born in 1963, sorry. He got murdered on his 18th birthday by the mob because he was on the wrong territory, doing the wrong things, and essentially started threatening the wrong people. So they paid off of his girlfriend at the time to take him out to a camping site on his 18th birthday, and then when he went out to take a piss, he never came back. They beat the shit out of him, put him on the tracks of a train on a box, let the train hit him. I was at the funeral. I'll never forget the hole. It was wet, and then the shovels kind of like made these like grooves on the inside. So when I licked this cord, my mother said she couldn't catch me. It was too late. You know, she kept snagging me, but this one was out of her hands, so to speak, and I flew back, you know, a couple of feet. I remember licking it. I remember thinking about it, but I don't know why. I remember some part about the hospital, because the interesting thing was, during that time, there were this sickness or this disease, which is named Schleigerocha, which I've never heard of before. It was not very popular, and people sitting prolonged time at the hospital were only cancer patients, kids with, you know, terminal diseases. So that was the ward that I was put in, because that's the only space they had. So it was an extended stay. And I became friends with these kids. We would hang out, I mean, so as much as we could. And I stayed at the hospital for, I don't remember how long, actually. But it was definitely more than a week. Maybe a month, maybe 2. I don't remember. Maybe 6. I really honestly don't remember much. But I do remember playing doctor with them, because we would play pretend doctor. And they would have all these cool, like, things that after they had their blood transfusions or their chemotherapy or their shots, whatever they had, the doctors would give them the empty, you know, cartridges, but obviously no needles and anything like that, just for them to fuck around with, you know, because there was no toys in the fucking communist hospital, which was communist Russia at the time, in the mid-'80s. So I never got as cool shit as they did. They always had these awesome, like, these tourniquets and these gauze pads, all these things. And I was always like, not jealous, but I was always asking my mother, like, well, why do they have and I don't? Like, what's up? She would always give me some bullshit excuse, like, oh, they behaved better or something like that. And I remember my mother sleeping in a chair next to me. I remember my uncle, my grandmother, even my father, my biological father, came by once in a while. And then I remember me comparing, I used to get a lot of shots, steroids and stuff like that. So that was the one thing that I didn't like. Okay, what kid likes shots, right? And I used to compare the nurses in terms of how much pain they would cause when I got these shots. Some of them, whatever the fuck they did, oh, bang, it fucking hurt like a bitch. Some of them were a little lighter, but there was this one nurse. I'll never forget her name. I mean, I forget her name, but she only had her once. And she was one of my last shots, I believe. She gave me a shot, and it literally felt like someone splashed a little bit of water on my buttocks. And that's it. And I was like, that's your shot? That's how you do it? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, where the fuck have you been? Kind of, you know, like, damn, man, I've been getting this pain and shit. So all these steroids inside of me, this is like, I'm sure this was somewhat experimental, because this is communist Russia. There's not a lot of stuff going on in terms of this disease, since I was the only one in the hospital with the cancer ward. The other thing I remember is the kids kept disappearing. Not disappearing, but they left. They weren't there anymore. You know, I was asking my mom, like, where did you know, so-and-so go? Where's, you know, Sergey? Where's Nastya? Where's so, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she would tell me that they got better. And they went home. And I was always like sad about that. And I was like, oh man, like, and when am I going to get better? And she goes, soon, don't worry. Little did I know that they were leaving, but they didn't get better. They were terminally ill kids, and they were dying one by one, and new ones kept getting brought in. And I was amongst these kids for longer than most of them were in the ward, so I had to watch my friends get better and then leave. And I was jealous because I thought that they were home hanging out. And I can imagine the strength it took my mother not to tell me the truth, to calm me down, because I wasn't exactly the calmest of children. My mother drank coffee when she had me, and when I was born, the doctors told my mother that I probably wouldn't live very long because of something that had happened to me. I had a little thing on my throat, like a little cyst or whatever. And my mother refused to accept this. She refused. She told me that she's had, I don't know how many abortions before I did, but that was the thing back then. There was really not too many condoms and birth control pills. If you didn't want a kid, dude, that's what would happen. So more than one, let's say, but for some reason she told me that you I wanted, you I knew that it was special. You were the one that I was like, I need this kid, I need this child. And I kept it. And I said, thanks, I guess, you know. Although in pretty low points when we were arguing, I said, I never asked for this. But for some reason, I needed to be born then from that woman at that time to go through all of these experiences. So when I was born, my mother looked up old remedies of something called zakalatsa, or galvanizing, if you will. And basically, zakalatsa is something you do to steel. I think it's called galvanizing, hardening. And the way it is that you take a baby and you put him in a bathtub, or her in a bathtub of water, and you lower the temperature of the water 1 or 2 degrees every day to the point where it's nearly freezing. And kind of like the Wim Hof method, a baby will naturally be okay with it. The other thing babies can do apparently is swim, and they know how to hold their breath underwater if they need to get submerged. The way my mom found that out is she read a book, she took me into the bathtub, and with her mother and her grandmother hitting her with canes and sticks saying, you're gonna drown your baby, put me in this tub of freezing water, because it was like that whatever day. She took my little float toy and she floated it above me, and then she just put the toy underneath the water. Now again, I can't imagine what my mother could have been going through thinking about this. What if my kid drowns and shit, you know? Sure enough, I didn't give a shit about the cold, held my breath, and I dove in after it. And here I am today at 37 years old, still alive and still with gratitude to her and everyone else. There was a door to the kitchen in St. Petersburg, in the apartment where we lived. And the door was just a regular frame wooden door, but the inside of it like was glass, just a, glass door. My mother and her friends, when she would have them over, they would sit in the kitchen, they would smoke cigarettes, and they would chat and talk. And I would be sleeping. For some reason that day, I really wanted to be with my mother. Maybe I was jealous of her having company over. Maybe I just wanted something. I don't know, whatever the fuck it was that was in my mind. I needed to be with my mom, and they just wouldn't let me into this door. They locked the door from the other side, and they wouldn't let me in. So I tried opening it, but it didn't open. So then, this I don't remember. Although I could picture it. I don't have a memory of it, but they told me what I did. They said that I backed up as far as I could, and I put my head down, and I ran into the door as hard as I could, breaking the glass with my head. Blood everywhere. Obviously, that got everyone's attention. So this was also before the age of 6. And my mother asked, why did you do this? And I told her I wanted to be with you when you had the door locked. So I got through. If that's not Aries, I don't know what is. stubborn motherfucker. I remember having a cavity in that house, my teeth hurting. I remember my calves hurting because they were growing. Terrible pains in my calves, growing pains. And since then, I've always just been a little off. And I'm not going to say off, like some people call me a genius, believe it or not. It's true. I don't know. I don't agree with them because I think genius is a lot further advanced than I am. But some people just debate me and say, no, you are. Okay. Most people call me weird, strange, not the same kind of person as everyone else. And I take pride in that because, to tell you the truth, most people around me are fucking boring. A lot of people think I'm too much. And that's fine too. I'd rather be too much than not enough. And for as long as I can remember, I took being weird as a compliment. Like, you're weird. I'm like, thanks, sweet. I didn't like my name for the longest time. Then I understood that it was a unique name and not a lot of people had it. So then once I realized that, people would say, what's your name? And I say, Dimitri. What's your last name? I was like, you don't need to know my last name. Why? How many Dimitris do you fucking know? You know? Before I left Russia, so obviously before the age of 7, I snuck out of my house. Well, I stayed out later than I should have, and we went to this dump, basically a garbage dump, because I was like a hobby back then. And an older kid had a fire going, and he was throwing bullets into fire. I don't know if they were AK bullets or whatever, but probably. And I was there. I don't remember any of them going off, thank God, but I did. I saw porno for the first time in Russia because I asked my mom why the male was putting his pee-pee in the girl's mouth. Somebody dared me to throw a rock at the transistors of the entire building in Nevsky Prospekt. Dom Dvor 27. Anyway, there was a courtyard where all the buildings were. And I think building 27 or 26. I threw it at the transformers and I blew the glass little things that had the powder in it, whatever, that kept the electricity up of the entire building. Obviously, it's the biggest lady in the house. Ran downstairs, realized that it was me that did it, grabbed my arm to where she couldn't let go. She took me to my mom. She said, this is what your son did, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember the rest of it. But I do remember finding needles in the park that we were playing. And these weren't medical needles, or they were rather, but they weren't for medical purposes, if you know what I mean. My uncle took part of that. They portrayed him as a hero that he used to fight off these crackheads and heroin dealers, heroin users, you know. But it turns out later on, the older I got, the more I found out that he wasn't fighting them off, he was actually feeding them. He was the dealer. Which is why he got popped on his 18th birthday, because he was a young kid just full of fucking stupidity and testosterone, and he picked up the wrong people. Stepped on some guy's son's, territory or whatever. Because back then in Russia, that's how easy it was. That's how easy it was to get killed. $200, anyone's dead. Pay a drunk $200. He would hit him over the head with a brick. Nobody would ever ask questions. The vestibule that led to our house was always smelled of piss. And when the demonstrations rolled through the Nevsky Prospekt, which is pretty much the Park Avenue of St. Petersburg, my mother would have to sneak out and let me go and just watch it with them. She would climb over the fence and take I think it was a 1x2 or whatever, 2x4, and stick it through the fence so I could step on the stick to get over the fence, just to see the tanks rolling down the streets. I had a pretty interesting childhood in Russia. And it's funny how easy it is for a child to just adapt that, take that in, and not really have a serious, issue about it. You see kids these days with the fucking iPads and all that bullshit. Safety this, safety that, I have to fill out a form every morning with the fucking mask shit. My God. Yes. And now you would like to think that, take one of these kids, you put them in that time, and they wouldn't last a second. They would. They would last a second. They would last a whole day, as long as no one actually fucked with them or killed them. So as easy it was to get killed in Russia, my mother, my father, my grandmother still let me go out every day, right into the fucking yard there, learn how to shoot bottle rockets out of matches, learn how to make smoke bombs out of ping pong balls, rode the bicycle on the roofs of garages. Nobody batted an eye. And now, it's different. So now when people call me crazy, they don't understand why. When people call me crazy, when they say, yo, you're nuts, bro. This guy's fucking nuts. They have no idea what I've actually been through. And I'm not saying that like in a pity-seeking sort of way. It's just that if they think that this is crazy, they should have seen me when I was 6, you know? Oh, man. Then I came to America and it all changed. Thank God. Because I probably wouldn't have made it too long in Russia, considering my character, my attitude, and my disregard for authority. Because it was easier in America to tell authority to go fuck itself. I could probably be a lawyer right now, and just because of the times I've been a defendant, how much I've learned about the system. Not because I need to take the bar exam. But it all goes back to that one zap. That one zap that hit me like a fucking ton of bricks. And I wonder, was it necessary for me to have that zap? Was it necessary for my soul to be born into this vessel from that woman at that time? That's why she was adamant about having me. And then was it necessary for me to lick that fucking wire so I can get zapped with 220, maybe at the age of 2 or 3, because something needed to be downloaded? After which I went to the hospital because whatever was downloaded was too much energy for my physical body at the time, and it couldn't handle it. So we went to the hospital. They pumped me full of steroids and whatever the fuck else it was to be able to handle this energy, but that suppressed it in an effort of keeping me alive. And now that I'm learning how to balance these things, it's coming back. What is it? I don't know exactly. Somebody called me a wizard the other day, and I was almost laughed, but they were 100% serious. They were not fucking joking. And of course I didn't laugh because it was flattering. But I've been alive for 37 years, so as far as I can count. And if you told me at any point in time that somebody would call me a wizard, and I would not only take it seriously, but as a compliment, I would probably have been like, cool. Because I don't remember for how long. Maybe it was even before I licked that fucking cord. I knew that there was something else. Something else. There are times I could feel as small as a speck of sand. And other times I would feel larger than the planets. And in fact, one of the first times I remember throwing up, that's exactly what I saw. I closed my eyes and I couldn't focus. Instead of getting the spins, I would see a small thing and a big thing, small thing and a big thing. Like a small paperclip and then a giant rock or something. And there's certain parts of my life that I remember like it was yesterday. And they say the memory changes and it fades and you kind of like create it. But I'm telling you, man, I remember sitting there when I was 5 years old. I was putting on my socks. I think it was the day I came back from the hospital. And I said to myself, you're never going to forget this moment, ever. You were sitting in your room, putting on your socks. I could tell you the color of the carpet was, the color my socks were, how long my toenails were, and why I chose to remember that specific moment. I don't know. Maybe it's because it was a happy moment in my life that I was finally home. Maybe it was a time reference that if I do ever see time travel, I can go back to. But you know what? Even if I did, I wouldn't change a fucking thing. Because where I'm at right now is exactly where I need to be and I want to be. There's a funnier thing too. My father, my biological father, was born on March 27th. I was born on March 26th. My house number was 27. My apartment number was 26. My daughter was born on the 26th. And if you flip 26 upside down, it's 92. And that's where my half-brother was born, 92. My daughter's mother was born on the 27th. So that obviously means something. It's not a coincidence that my apartment number was 26 and I was born on the 26th. If I believed in coincidences, I'd be a naive son of a bitch. No. Irony is prevalent in this universe, but coincidence is not. Coincidence does not exist. Just a laziness to see the significance of two events. Kind of like the length of this video.